everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, we have a lot to cover, especially around the world of the NFL, with lots of updates happening on stories that we have been covering throughout the offseason. I hope everybody had a great day so far today. We're going to start off our show outside of the NFL, though, with one of the bigger stories that has been covered over the last couple days about the potential 2028 Olympic roster in LA. An Olympics that I think for the first time the U.S. might not be favored in basketball for. So we'll talk about that Olympics, see if there's a team we can put together that will be 100% accurate. We're also going to talk about the quarterback injury that happened to the young, promising rookie, JJ McCarthy. He comes out torn meniscus, and we'll talk about the two options he has and how that might affect the Vikings season coming up in 2024. Then we'll do some updates of trade rumors, trade talks around the NFL, including, guess who? Brandon Ayuk, Hassan Reddick, those two guys, as well as some other news from around the world of the NFL. Before closing out our show, finishing out the AFC South, talking about the Houston Texans, talking about their offseason, giving them a grade, talking about their upcoming season, and of course, giving them a record prediction. But before we get into any of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is use that super chat option. If you are on YouTube, leave a message with that super chat. It should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you are not on YouTube and you would like to and if you'd like to leave a message as well, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. If you have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments or the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into our topics today. We're going to start off today in, I guess, the NBA, the world of basketball here, talking a little bit about the potential 2028 Olympic basketball roster, something that has a lot of intrigue around it, seeing as this is most likely the final Olympics for Steph Curry, for LeBron James, maybe even for Kevin Durant. We'll talk about him. He's one of those big three that might be back. But this 2024 gold medal winning Olympic team was this last hurrah, right? This was the last hurrah for these legends of our time, these legends of NBA basketball, of international basketball, to go out and win that gold medal. And they got it done. But now we need to take a look ahead at a world that is all but caught up to the United States at this point. We saw the U.S. obviously get pushed to the brink multiple times in this playoffs, as well as a U.S. team that is undoubtedly going to be, I won't say undoubtedly, but most likely going to be worse in 2028 than it was in 2024. It's not easy to build a roster better than the one that was just built, but we're going to go ahead and give it a try. Over here, starting off our roster, I want to make one thing clear. I can't tell the future, obviously. There's going to be lots of young guys that come into the league 2 years from now, 3 years, 2 or 3 years from now, maybe even next year, that are going to explode out of nowhere, and I bet you at least one of them makes this team. That being said, the majority of the players that I have on my list here already are in the NBA. And I feel like that is going to track. I have one player that is currently in college, but everyone else is currently in the NBA. All of these Americans are here. So we'll just start off with the guards here. And I did this I had a couple of different ways of doing this. I wanted to get a couple of big men. I really like the 2 or 3 big men that they had in this year's Olympics. So I wanted to build around that because size is very important in FIBA basketball, going up against some of those greats around the world. But I just wanted to start with some of the guards here, right? There's Obviously, some of these young guys on the current 2024 Olympic team that I think are going to make it, and we'll just start off with them. Tyrese Halliburton should be invited back. Now, if there's anyone that's not going to be invited back, it's going to be him. Obviously, his role was bench warmer. He knew that. He barely got into the games. He seemed pretty happy with his role there. The other guy that obviously is going to make it that was on this year's team, Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards is probably going to be the headliner for this team. He's going to be the star of this team, of the next generation of U.S. Olympians. He is the lock to be on this team. The other returner that I have on here, or I have a couple more returners. I've got Jason Tatum on here. He's one of those that I'm not sure if he will return, especially after what happened in this year's Olympics with his lack of playing time. I do have Jason Tatum making it. He is just too skilled for the U.S. team not to have it. And in the event that he doesn't, because he says no. We're going off the assumption that everybody says yes here. There's no reason for them to say no. Maybe Steve Kerr isn't the head coach next time, and there's no way Jason Tatum doesn't get playing time on a roster that isn't like it was this Olympics. Couple more returners. Bam Adebayo. I think he is a lock to return as well. His defense, what he does down low anchoring this team, is huge. He also, can shoot the occasional three, stretch the floor, but his defense really is the big thing. And this is a team that's going to lack size a little bit, and it's going to struggle a little more on the defensive end from what I have it as right now. But I have Bam making the team as well. And the last returner is Kevin Durant. I do think that Kevin Durant comes back. I don't think he's going to have a super huge role. I don't think he's going to be a starter or anything. I don't think that he's going to get super huge minutes, but I do think he can play the role as a mentor, someone that can come in and, be that legend of U.S. basketball to convince these young guys to come and play. That's my thinking there for Kevin Durant coming back, maybe going for a fifth gold. And obviously, he's still going to be great at this point. I have no reason to believe he won't be among the best players in the world still. Outside of those 5 returners, I have a couple of guys that I think should absolutely make it. Starting off back at the guard position, John Morant, especially if he's healthy, his explosiveness, there's no reason why he shouldn't be on this team. Again, health has been an issue with him. Off the court issues have been happening, but John Morant is a guy who is insanely talented and should be on this roster. Next to Tyrese Halliburton as the main ball handlers, you have Edwards. You have Anthony Edwards as well, and of course Devin Booker. I did skip over him on a returner after what he did this Olympics. He could have an expanded role on a less stacked team, but his ability to go and play any role that's necessary is going to be huge for a team that always will be stacked. So Devin Booker, I think, also makes the team this time around as well. The next position down, the three position, I think is going to have a couple of new guys. Paolo Banchero, one of these young guys, I think what we've seen out of him already on the Magic, especially on the defensive end, is going to be much needed. This is a team that's going to have enough on offense, no matter what. What it's going to need is defense, and I think bringing in a guy like Banchero that can play both ends, shoot the ball well, and be an elite defender on almost all 5 positions is going to be huge. Next to him, another guy that can provide defense, Jaylen Brown. I think he was snubbed from this year's team. I think they invite him back, get that Celtic duo of Tatum and Brown on the court together. Finishing out down low, we have the one guy that is not currently in the NBA that I put on this roster, and that is Cooper Flagg. He went out and he practiced with this team. He looked really good. There's no reason to believe he won't come in and automatically make a huge step in the NBA. I have Cooper Flagg making this Olympic team, and the final 2 spots are going to be filled out by some centers or some guys that can play center, starting off with Zion Williamson. And I have heard rumblings of don't let Zion on the team, and I get it to a certain extent. We haven't seen him healthy that much, but when he is healthy, especially in these big moments, he's played 1 playoff game. It was a play-in game earlier this year. He went off for 40 points. He is a great player. He is one of the best American players in the world if he can stay healthy. And he had all that hype in the draft for a reason. He is on my Olympic roster here. And rounding it out, I've got Chet Holmgren. Huge guy, can anchor the defense down low, stretch the floor on the offensive end, be the anti-Wemby for France, because France is going to be insane. We talk about how good they were this year. Imagine how good they're going to be when Wemby continues to develop. When you have the top 2 picks from this year most likely making into the draft, plus they have a point guard coming up, I believe, in this year's draft, maybe next year's draft, that is going to be on that team who's supposed to be really, really good. This is a French team that might even be favored over the U.S. And I know this isn't the sexiest team in the world, right? A team led by Anthony Edwards, Jason Tatum, and Bam Adebayo or Zion Williamson. This isn't this year's roster of Omega stars, right? This isn't an Avengers level team, but this is still a really solid team. You're going to get great passing and ball handling from Halliburton and Ja. You'll get those highlight plays from Ja, Anthony Edwards, Zion Williamson, these guys that are flashy, especially on down low finishing. And then you can stretch the floor with some great shooters on this roster as well in Booker and Brown and Durant. Of course, I think getting that veteran presence of Durant is very important for a team that is going to be as young as this. Again, it's a step back, but I feel like it will literally be impossible to take a step forward from this year's 2024 Olympic roster. Let me know what you think of this Olympic roster. Again, Tyrese Halliburton, Ja Morant, Anthony Edwards, Devin Booker, Paolo Banchero, Jaylen Brown, Cooper Flagg, Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum, Bam Adebayo, Zion Williamson, and Chet Holmgren. Let me know if there's anyone I missed that you think should be in there. Anyone that I put in there that you think should have no chance to be in there. And any other thoughts you had on this. I did have a couple honorable mentions that didn't get in. Derek White, I think he has a place to play on any team with his 3-and-D style, but I couldn't put him in over other guys. Jalen Brunson is a guy that I had penciled in at first, but I needed some size on here, so I took him out in some defense. Tyrese Maxey and Cade Cunningham, I could see taking a couple of those guard spots as well, maybe moving in over Tyrese Halliburton. But those are the guys that I have behind them. But let me know, like I said, what you think. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to move into our NFL coverage, talk a little bit about the rookie quarterback injury that took place over the weekend. We just got results back of what that is with JJ McCarthy, so stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just went over a potential 2028 Olympic roster for the LA Olympics. It's hard to predict out there, but I think I put together the best list I possibly could. In this segment, we are going to take a look at the NFL. Stay there for the rest of our show. we have some news on JJ McCarthy's injury. We'll talk about what that is, how long he'll be out for, and what that means for the Vikings in their upcoming season after he just went off in his first ever NFL action in week 1 in the preseason. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, or if you are on YouTube, use the super chat feature that is right next to chat. If you do either of those and leave a message, it should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I'll get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the NFL here, starting off in Minnesota. JJ McCarthy is one of the more controversial picks of the draft. He kind of flew up draft boards. He ends up going to the Vikings at pick 11. He was the 5th quarterback taken off the board. QB5 kind of feels like a good spot for him, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. After one preseason performance, a good performance for him, I shall say, he looked really, really good in limited action there. He goes down with a knee injury. He has an MRI, and it turns out he tears a meniscus. Now, while this might not affect the Vikings right away because Sam Darnold was still in line to start, it is a tough break because there was a shot if he continued to play like he did in that first week that he would have taken the starting job from the beginning. We don't know what the timetable is for his return. Now, because there are 2 different kinds of surgeries, and doctors and JJ McCarthy and the Vikings haven't announced which one they're going to do. One of them is a 4 to 6 week injury. The other one is a 4 to 6 month injury, basically out for the rest of the season there. And I think that is most likely the one that's going to happen. If you look at the depth chart for the Vikings, Sam Darnold was already ahead of him, and it doesn't make sense for the Vikings to rush back JJ McCarthy if he wasn't part of their original plans. Now, if the plan was for him to come back halfway through the season, at this point, just let him rest. JJ McCarthy, if he's going to work, he needs to be completely healthy because he's not the most mobile guy. And while the Vikings have a good offensive line, they don't have a great offensive line. He has great weapons around him, and I think Sam Darnold in this situation can be really effective. Now, this is going to feel, if he's successful, it's going to be more like a Case Keenum situation than a Kirk Cousins situation, long-term kind of thinking, because there was always going to be a turnover to JJ McCarthy. And it felt like to me it was always going to be next season. So this gives the Vikings an excuse not to play JJ McCarthy all season. And honestly, I think that's the best thing. Now, it would be even better if he was out there practicing and healthy and got a look at, and got some playing time in practice. But as far as getting him out there in the real games, he will have time. He will be able to show that he deserved to go in that first round. He will be able to come out and say, hey, look at me. I'm JJ McCarthy. I belong in the NFL here. But that's going to have to wait till next season. And I do think at the end of the day, that is beneficial for the Vikings and for JJ McCarthy. He's going to be able to learn this offense better. He's already a smart kid. That's something that, everybody that talked to him at the combine when they did their draft interviews said he's very smart. He picks up the offense. He's going to be able to develop with the NFL coaches, get the relationships going. And I do think that this, like I said, is going to benefit him. Learn how to be a pro before becoming a pro. I feel like nowadays a lot of players are rushed into being great. And if they're not great right away, we give up on them. And they don't often get other chances. I think a step back for JJ McCarthy will do him wonders, to be completely honest with you. I think this is a blessing in disguise. Obviously, you never want anything to happen injury-wise, but this gives JJ McCarthy the chance to fully adjust to be a pro, behind Sam Darnold, a guy that has though limited, had success in the NFL. There were times with the Panthers, the very beginning of his run with the Panthers, where people were looking at him like, oh, did he turn it around? There were limited times with the Jets where he did that. He came into a game with the 49ers last season. He looked pretty solid. This is a team that is stacked enough that they don't need a world beater at quarterback, right? They have Justin Jefferson. They have Jordan Addison. They have TJ Hawkinson. They have Aaron Jones. They have a good offensive line. They have a good offensive-minded coach. This is a team that can survive a lot of different things. And JJ McCarthy going down, I think, is a blessing in disguise for them. That's my thoughts on this. JJ McCarthy, I think, can turn it around. I've been low on him for a long time, but I do think if there's a situation for him to turn it around, it's up there in Minnesota, and not rushing him into a situation when he's not ready, I think is better. Maybe we see him at the end of the year. Maybe he takes that shorter option and he still does come in. But I think at this point, especially with the injuries, it's best to wait a whole season for JJ McCarthy to make his debut. I think that would benefit the Vikings the most. You don't have that QB controversy at all anymore. And I think that's really good for the team to not have a QB controversy. But anyway, let me know what you think of JJ McCarthy, what he should do if both surgeries are an option, the 4 to 6 weeks or the 4 to 6 months option, as well as what you think the future of him is with Vikings. But we're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to take a look at some other trade news going around the NFL. Two stories that we have been covering a lot this offseason we'll do a quick update on, including the main character of the offseason, Brandon Ayuk. More updates on him and Hassan Reddick. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over the JJ McCarthy update. He has a torn meniscus, will be out either 4 to 6 weeks or 4 to 6 months, depending on the surgery that he chooses, putting Sam Darnold as the penciled-in starter for Week 1. And most likely the entire season. We'll see what that does for the Vikings. I think that actually gives them the most advantageous situation for this season as far as success goes. I don't think it's a long-term solution, but still. We also talked about in the first segment a 2028 possible Olympic men's basketball roster. Just a couple of returners, only one of those old legends. A changing of the guard has completely happened. By this point, I do have Kevin Durant back in the roster, though, going for his 5th straight gold against on a team that might not even be favored then. I truly do believe that some of these teams, like France or Serbia, might even be favored over the U.S. at that point. But anyway, In this segment here, we're going to continue our trip around the NFL, going over some updated trade rumors. There's been lots and lots of news coming out in the last couple days about players requesting trades, players' trades going through or not going through. Of course, we have to update you on Brandon Ayuk and much more. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, or if you are on YouTube, use the super chat button right next to the chat feature. If you do that, leave a message. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. Excuse me. I appreciate everybody so much for tuning in, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into our next NFL topic here, this time covering some updated NFL trade rumors. Trade rumors going around the NFL here. And we'll start off with the most recent update in the Brandon Ayuk saga. If you have been paying attention at all to the NFL this offseason, I guarantee you've heard of it. It is into a stalemate at this point. We are in a classic Mexican standoff with Brandon Ayuk, the Steelers and the 49ers. It came out today, just about an hour before we went live, that Brandon Ayuk, the 49ers, and the Steelers all have deals in place with each other. The 49ers and the Steelers have a compensation package put together. We don't know what that compensation package is, or at least I haven't seen what it is. If you know what it is, go and throw it in the comments for me. I'd love to hear more information. The Steelers and Brandon Ayuk reportedly have a deal or are working towards a deal, as well as the 49ers and Brandon Ayuk having a deal, or at least working towards a deal. Reports are if the 49ers have a written out extension for Brandon Ayuk that would keep him in San Francisco in the Bay Area for the long term. So now we're sitting here in a classic Mexican standoff. All three teams are, all three parties, I should say, are here with their ammo and they're ready to go at any moment. This all depends on Brandon Ayuk. And I have never seen a player have this much power over an offseason. And I mean that. I don't know how many times we have talked about Brandon Ayuk here on this show. He has, when I say he's the character of the offseason, I mean he's the main character of the offseason. We've had plenty of offseason stories. For a little while, it seemed like T. Higgins was going to be the main character here. But no, Brandon Ayuk is the main character. He goes back and forth with his trade requests, with where he's going to go. And now we are sitting here talking. We've successfully narrowed it down to two teams, or at least we think we have. The Steelers are a place that he really seems like he wants to go play for. But I don't know what's taking them so long, if I'm being completely honest with you. From the reports, it seems like the Niners have compensation in place. It seems like Brandon Ayuk and the Steelers are in a good place. I don't know why this hasn't happened. I know there's a standing offer from San Francisco to bring Brandon Ayuk back. But I don't know why, if Brandon Ayuk wants to play for the Niners and he thinks he has a deal in place and the compensation is already done, why this hasn't happened. This is honestly the weirdest story that I've had to cover in my time here, because it just has so many twists and turns. But I will keep you updated with anything we're at. Right now we're at a standstill. We're at a standoff. And I think it's just about 50-50 with where he's going to go. I think maybe leaning a little bit more towards the Steelers, but I'm really curious to see what that trade compensation is. Obviously, the Patriots and the Browns, it involved a wide receiver to help win. Now, I heard, again, not a reported source or anything, just a random comment on a couple of Twitter posts over there. I saw a couple people say it was gonna be Fitzpatrick, Micah Fitzpatrick. That that seems like too much. But we'll see. We'll see what happens in this trade. The other trade that's been going on that we have to keep you updated on is also a weird situation, and it has to do with the Jets and a mismanagement of new asset Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick came over to the Jets in a trade this offseason. It just happened. He has yet to play a snap for the New York Jets, and he has already requested a trade. He came over because Philadelphia wasn't going to give him an extension. The Jets trade for him. He was known to be asking for an extension, and apparently there's a handshake agreement there saying, "Hey, come and play, and we will work out an extension with you." Right? We'll take a look. He comes over and he's already holding out right immediately. The Jets gave up a conditional third that could turn into a second-round pick for Hassan Reddick, and now it doesn't seem like the Jets are going to pay Hassan Reddick, and he's requested a trade. Now, the Jets' response to this is to say what it was in less words from Joe Douglas. No, we're not going to trade you. What do you think we're doing? You think we're actually going to trade you after we just traded for you? No, that's to paraphrase what he has just said. He said it a lot more eloquently and in a couple more paragraphs than I just did there. But the long and short of it is, again, we're at another standstill. They said they were going to fine him as much as the CBA allows him to. They said they expected to see him back at camp and go and hang out and play with his teammates, but they're not going to trade him. It's a messy situation. Do I expect Hassan Reddick to hold out for this entire year just to get a contract? No, we've seen how that fails. I expect him to go and play, be angry, and use that to get a massive contract. He's been one of the top 3 pass rushers by sack numbers in the last 4 or 5 seasons. He has 50 sacks over the last 4 years. That, I believe, is second in the league, which is insane how great of a pass rusher he has been. It's a great weapon to have for the Jets, and we just finished covering them. If Hassan Reddick isn't there, that pass rush gets immensely weaker. Now, that's still a great defense, regardless of a weaker pass rush. They still have probably the best secondary in the league, some of the best linebacker core in the league. And with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, the offense should be stabilized, should be at the very least fine, which if it was that last year, they probably make the playoffs because of how good the defense was. Nothing's a guarantee in football, but I don't expect anything to happen with Hassan Reddick. I expect Hassan Reddick to hold out as long as he can. I don't think he's going to get a deal. He's going to test free agency, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. He's definitely not coming back to the Jets, though. This is a one and done. He's not happy here, and it's just kind of dumb. That's how I describe that. That's the only word I can use to describe this situation, because if you're Joe Douglas and the Jets, right, you say, oh, we want Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick is unhappy. Philadelphia is not going to give him a contract, and we would like him on our team. You know this information when you trade for him, and yet having no intention to extend him, you think it's going to be just fine. I don't think, or I hope that Joe Douglas doesn't think that he's holding out for a new contract just because he was with the Eagles. I really hope he doesn't. He doesn't think the Jets are the reason for. The Jets are the reason that he is going to play, because it's the New York Jets, because it's a New York market, because it's not the Eagles. I think that's ridiculous, and I think he should have seen this coming from about a million miles away. And yet he sat here twiddling his thumbs, letting this situation develop to a point where it can't be fixed anymore, where you're going to let a great player walk out the door, where you're going to let a guy who has 50 sacks over the last 4 seasons, whether he plays or not this year, walk for nothing. You gave up a third, potentially a second-round pick for a guy to be pissy at you because you knew what he wanted and you wouldn't give it to him. That is just bad management. That's bad GMing. If you're going to trade for a guy that wants a contract, you have to talk to him to see if he'd be okay, without you giving a contract, or give him a contract. I feel like this is common sense here. And maybe I'm way overreacting here, but it just doesn't make any sense. This compounded with what they did in free agency, basically just bowing the knee to Aaron Rodgers last year and it becoming a disaster. That's two straight off seasons where this front office has done a lot of bad. Now, their drafting has been immaculate. They've done awesome in the draft, which is why this team has developed so much in this Joe Douglas era. But you need to be able to use free agency and trade. That's 2/3 of your job right there. It's very important that you know how to build a team outside of the draft, because the draft can only do so much. Now, it can build a great foundation for your team, but you have to be able to build outside of it, and you have to be able to know when to trade for guys and when to sign guys and when to say no or yes to guys. And I think if they had no intention of extending Hassan Reddick when they traded for him, that is a waste of a 3rd/2nd round pick. And there is no excuse for it, to be completely honest with you. I don't understand what the Jets and Joe Douglas are doing. This does not make them look good. And if I was a Jets fan, I'd just be at a loss of words, to be completely honest. It's just a dumb move. It really is. This whole situation is dumb. But anyway, let me know what your thoughts are on what Brandon Ayuk should do. 49ers or Steelers. I think he should stay with the Steelers because that gives him the best chance of winning. But but it seems like he has a little more momentum to the Steelers right now, as well as what the Jets should do with Hassan Reddick. I think they should pay him. But anyway, let me know what your thoughts are. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to finish off our show talking about the Houston Texans. We're continuing our series covering every single NFL team, giving them a record prediction as well as an offseason grade. So we're going to give that offseason grade to the Houston Texans coming up next. Stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over a couple of updated trade rumors, including Hassan Reddick asking for a trade after just being traded to the Jets because the Jets are being the Jets. We talked about the update to the Brandon Ayuk situation, a never-ending story of crazy twists and turns there for him. We also talked about JJ McCarthy, his situation with the injury, probably keeping him out all season, whether or not he stays healthy for it or not. And we talked about a potential 2028 U.S. basketball team and what it might look like. All of that is back earlier in the episode. We are going to finish off our show in these next two segments talking about the Houston Texans, continuing our series of covering every single NFL team. Today, we are finishing up the AFC South, talking about the defending AFC South champions, the Houston Texans. We're going to give them an off-season grade in this segment. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go and hit that super chat button. If you are here on YouTube, that button is right next to the chat option. If you are not on YouTube, you can go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a message. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to finish off our show here talking a little bit about the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans offseason didn't need to be too big. They hit everything last offseason. Everything that they possibly could have wanted. They hit it out of the park. CJ Stroud has maybe the best rookie quarterback season in the history of the NFL. DeMeco Ryans looks like a rising star at head coach. You have Will Anderson Jr. win Defensive Rookie of the Year, the second year in a row that a team has both the offensive and defensive Rookie of the Year, doing what the Jets were able to do just 2 years ago. This is an incredible turnaround for a team. Obviously, winning a playoff game last season after being in the basement, being the laughingstock of the league, turning it around on a dime like that is insane, and it's not something that's easy to replicate. The question is, was it a fluke? Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you. I'm not going to string you along. I don't think CJ Stroud is a fluke. The question is the rest of the team a fluke? They played a very easy schedule last year, one of the easiest in the NFL. And throughout this entire AFC South discussion that we've done on Thursday, Friday, Monday, and today, going over all of the AFC South teams, there's been a theme. The schedule is harder this year. There's always the talk about a sophomore slump with a lot of guys, and we see it sometimes. And I don't expect CJ Stroud to throw for 4,000 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions again, or whatever he did last season, leading the league in touchdown interception ratio and passing, like only 2 quarterbacks have ever done before, Tom Brady and Joe Montana, which is elite company to be in. He's going to be great. The question is the rest of the team going to be able to develop with him? And I think the Texans did a good job swinging big this offseason. Starting with, obviously, the biggest additions. They come on offense. They go out and they make a huge blockbuster trade for star receiver Stephon Diggs, adding him to a wide receiver room that is quite possibly the best in the league. They extend Nico Collins, big contract for him. They still have Tank Dell on a rookie deal. They have Robert Woods, who consummate professional, one of the best veterans in the league when he's healthy. John Mechie, speed guy. We haven't really seen him be able to take that big step because injuries, and then he kind of got overshadowed by Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and Noah Brown has come up huge in a couple of different spots. They also trade for Ben Skoranek, who can do a million different things, as well as trading for Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon, I'm going to be completely honest with you, is not a running back that I have ever been really high on. That being said, I think it absolutely is an upgrade from Devin Singletary. While Devin Singletary had 899 yards last season, and it's coming off a year where Dameon Pierce took a step back, it's an upgrade. I still don't like Joe Mixon. I don't like him that much in the offense. They give him a new 3-year deal, taking him through his age 31 season. So it's not the worst thing, and it's not super expensive. The most head-scratching move of this offseason also came from the Texans, though. And it goes along with this huge blockbuster trade of adding Stephon Diggs. It's the fact that they reworked his deal to make it a 1-year contract instead of a 4-year deal. And as far as I've seen, I haven't seen them explain the reason for it. It doesn't make any sense to me. I understand there's reports of him being a locker room cancer, right? I understand he can get hot-headed, but you can flip him for assets if that happens, right? I know he had a little bit of a decline last season, but now he's going to be surrounded by a million different weapons. He's not going to have that much attention on him, all the double coverage all the time. He should be able to work against signal coverage and win those balls. Right? This is not something that I think makes any sense. And again, if there's something out there that you guys know that I have just overlooked somehow, put in the chat. I'd love to hear. But I have not heard anything explaining why Stephon Diggs' contract was reduced by years. It just makes no sense to me at all. And it also makes the trade worse. They didn't have to give up too much for him. They had 4 years of control of one of the best receivers in the league. And now they only have one. And I know it's a deep wide receiver room, but still, it's always good to have a guy like that. And again, worst comes to worst, you can just flip him for an asset. Flip him for a third, make some of your money back. This move makes no sense. But I'm going to give Houston the benefit of the doubt because last season was so good. We're going to see what happens. On the defensive side of the ball, they add a whole lot. They go out and they get Al-Shaair from the Texans. They also add D'Amico Autry as well as Daniil Hunter, really shoring up that pass rush next to Will Anderson. The pass rush should be they use a line to free agency. Well, junior corner rookie, the third year guy now should be really good, as well as Jalen Petrie, who took a big step up. Jimmy Ward they bring in, and they their first round draft pick, Kamari Lassiter, is a guy that I really liked coming out of college. Talking about their draft, it was interesting because obviously they gave up a lot to move up in the draft last year and draft Will Anderson Jr. It all works out there. So they don't have a pick until the second round. They have 2 picks in the second round, though. They draft Kamari Lassiter. We already mentioned him. I really like that pick. I think he should be really good. They also get some offensive line help drafting him in and the depth behind Laramie Tunsil, one of the best offensive linemen in the league. The rest of the offensive line needs some work. Now, it's not the worst offensive line, but it does need some work. It's kind of fine. There's no one else on this draft board other than Kamari Lassiter that I expect to come make a huge impact on this team aside from injuries. The question really is how much is where problems become or splitting the ball between all these, especially if you're looking at a fantasy standpoint. You have now Tank Dell, who exploded onto the scene, Nico Collins, who you just gave a big extension to, and Stephon Diggs. That's a lot of stuff. Not to mention Dalton Schultz, who quietly is one of the best tight ends in the league here, who you bring in from Dallas last season, as well as Joe Mixon, who you need to get the rock to. This is going to be a tough team for the offense to go all around. But this team has all the weapons it needs. And we saw the defense be able to step up in big spots and be opportunistic. This defense should be better. The defense isn't great, but it has potential. Now, when we're talking about the offense's potential is through the roof, all the way up to the moon. It has the potential to literally be the best offense in all of football. Do I think it will be the best offense in all of football? No. But this is a team that won 10 games last season. This is a team that snuck into the playoffs on the literally the last play of the season, basically. And this is a team whose win total right now is set at 9.5. I'm going to give them a B- for the offseason, mostly because of that head-scratching move of bringing in Stephon Diggs and then reducing his contract. It would have probably been a B+, but I just don't understand it at all. So I'm going to change that to a B-. But anyway. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to see whether or not I have the Texans going over or under that number of 9.5 wins, improving or getting worse on last season's results, and if they can best the Colts, who currently, through 3 teams in the AFC South, have the division lead. We'll talk about all that and more coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished talking about the Texans offseason. I gave them a B-, mostly because of the head-scratching decision to take 3 years off of the Stephon Diggs contract. In this segment, we're going to see whether or not they go over the projected 9.5 wins set by Vegas, and if they can take the division for the second year in a row. We'll also go over the AFC South standings, as this is the fourth and final team that we have to cover in the AFC South. Football's right around the corner, guys. We're almost done with this. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, do the super chat feature. If you do either of those, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to finish off our show today talking a little bit about the Texans season preview. We're going to go through all 18 weeks, all 17 games, see if they can take this division for the second year in a row. Currently, as it stands, through the 3 teams that we've given, the Colts have the division lead. I have them going 10-7. We'll see if the Texans can beat them. So, and the AFC South, this, like I've said with all the teams before, it's a harder schedule. The Texans also, along with playing a tougher schedule, have to play a first place schedule now, which puts them against teams like the Chiefs and the Bengals. This is going to be not as easy of a year. Again, they won 10 games last season, and I do think they improved this offseason, but it was marginal improvements. So we'll see how much of a difference this makes. Week 1 of the 2024-2025 NFL season, CJ Stroud and the Texans take on the Colts. This is a rematch in Lucas Oil of the game that sent the Texans to the playoffs last year. Heartbreaking game for the Colts. I think the Colts get their revenge in week 1. The Texans fall to 0-1. Week 2, they get the next coming of the quarterback in Caleb Williams at home. Home opener, CJ Stroud versus Caleb Williams should be a star-studded game after what we saw in week 1 of the preseason with Caleb Williams. I'm going to give this game to the Texans. The Texans improve to 1-1 on the year. Week 3, on the road against the Vikings, the Sam Darnold-led Vikings, as JJ McCarthy, we talked about earlier today, goes down with a torn meniscus. I think the Texans take care of business, win this one, although I do think this won't be as easy as some people think. They improve to 2-1 on the year. Week 4, taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars at home. Trevor Lawrence, the $55 million man, loses this game. The Texans win, improve to 3-1. That's 3 straight victories for the Texans. Another huge test for them. They take on Josh Allen and the Bills. But you know what type of game this is? This is a revenge game. This is a Stephon Diggs revenge game, and I think he's going to go off. The Texans win this game. Stephon Diggs goes for 5 touchdowns and 400 yards. I'm kidding about that. But the Texans do win this game. They improve to 4-1 on the year. And then they get a little bit of a 1-week break before going back against playoff teams. They take on the Patriots in Foxborough. That team's a mess right now. The Texans take care of business, improve to 5-1. Week 7 against the Packers up in Lambeau. This should be a really good game. Potential Super Bowl matchup, maybe? Possibly? We'll talk about our Super Bowl picks later, but the Texans win this game up in Lambeau, improve to 6-1. That is now a 6-game winning streak for the Texans. This is a really good Texans team. I don't know what to tell you. Week 8 against the Colts once again. This time it is this time it is on the road. Week 1 is at home. I do think that the Colts take care of business and that winning streak. The Colts are the only team so far to take care of business against the Texans. They fall to 6-2 through 8 weeks. And that's where we stand at the halfway point. 6-2 on the season. Bye week is a little ways down the line. There is a tough rest of the year. Again, like I said, it's not easy. They get the Jets, the Lions, the Cowboys, the Dolphins, the Chiefs, the Ravens, all down the stretch. That is not an easy schedule. That is a lot of playoff teams to go up against, but they're in a good spot. They're 6-2. They only need to win 4 out of the last. They only need to win 4 out of the last 9 games, so they can go below 500. Or they just need to win 5. Excuse me. Just need 5 out of the last 9 games to win the division. So we'll see if they can get that. Starts off good against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. I have the Jets losing this game. The Texans improve to 7-2. Week 10 against the Lions. Dan Campbell and the Lions. This should be another really, really good game. The Lions lose, though. I do have the Texans winning this game as they improve to 8-2 on the year. They take on the Dallas Cowboys in Jerry World, a cross-Texas rivalry. This is going to be much different than almost any other Houston Dallas game that there ever has been. I think there's a lot more momentum behind Houston this year, and I think they flood that stadium and win that game. Take down the Cowboys on the road, improve to 9-2. Then they get a slight decrease from three straight great teams. They take on the Titans here in this one. That is a win at home against the Tennessee Titans and Will Levis. They improve to 10-2 through 12 weeks. That is a 4-game win streak, just broken up by the Colts. Then they take on the Jaguars, another division game. This one is on the road. Right before the bye week, a lot of games have been played, and this is coming off of a bye week for the Jags. I'm giving the Jags a win here. Heading into the bye, they're now 10-3, sitting pretty on the top of this division. The Colts, as it stands right now, are 6-7. So they have a pretty commanding lead in this division. This is all but wrapped up, but this is a tough schedule down the stretch after the bye week. The Dolphins, then the Chiefs, then the Ravens, then the Titans on the road. This is not going to be an easy schedule by any stretch of the imagination. I do have them beating the Dolphins, though. I think the Dolphins are going to struggle a little bit against some good teams, and this is in the middle of a brutal stretch for them down the stretch of that season. We talked about it earlier. I think they beat the Dolphins in this one. Then they get the Chiefs, and Patrick Mahomes is going to do his thing on the road in Chiefs Kingdom. The Texans lose this game. They fall in Week 16 to the Chiefs. Then they get the Ravens and Lamar Jackson, and this one is going to be really good, but I am giving this one to the Ravens, even though it is in Houston. Final week of the season, they're currently sitting at 11-5. They've locked up the division. They rest their starters against the Titans, and I have the Titans beating them to close out the season. They finish out the year at 11-6. It's not quite good enough to be the 1 seed in the AFC, but it might be good enough for the 2 seed based on the entire AFC South standings. I teased this battle between the Colts and the Texans while we were going through all of this. The Texans finish at the top of the division at 11-6. Second place in the division goes to the Colts at 10-7. The Colts did take down the Texans twice, though, this season, so they get a playoff spot at 10-7. Then we get to the 2 that didn't make it. We have the Jaguars finishing at 7-10 on the year, and the Titans at 4-13. This is going to be a much harder schedule for the AFC South, but I do have the Texans and the Colts advancing to the playoffs. Let me know what you think of anything I said about the Texans or the AFC South. I'd love to hear your comments or anything else you thought of while during the show. If there's something you'd like me to cover, again, throw it in the comments. I'll take a look at it before we do our show tomorrow, but I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me today here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day. We'll be back here same time, same place tomorrow, covering all the biggest news in the world of sports and on to a brand new division to cover in the NFL. I will see you then. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.